In the future, a mutated strain of rabies that people call mad dog disease spreads across the entire world. It moves quickly from animals to humans, and anyone who gets bitten turns into a monster in just 90 seconds. Because of that, in a very short time more than 6 billion people either die or become these creatures. These monsters have a strange ability to tolerate pain, and they are extremely violent. That is why they want to kill any normal human they see. The world becomes a massive ruin, and groups of these creatures become a common sight everywhere. The military manages to gather some normal survivors inside an underground nuclear facility. They cooperate with scientists from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to run experiments and try to find a cure. But first, they need to find the very first person who turned into one of these monsters, because that person's blood might contain the cure. The army captures several of the creatures and locks them in cages, trying to learn from them how the outbreak started. Morgan is a civilian who was bitten and infected, but strangely he never turned into a monster. It seems that his body has a natural immunity to the virus. Unfortunately, the scientists are unable to create a vaccine from his blood. However, the bite gives Morgan the ability to understand the monsters and speak their language, so he joins Dr. Gina's team to help with the research. The soldiers bring in one of the creatures while it is in a state of extreme rage and strap it to a chair inside a glass cage. The process begins when they play music, because the monsters feel pain when they hear it. The creature twists and struggles against the chair, trying to break free from the restraints, but it cannot. When Morgan feels the creature has suffered enough, he turns off the music and smiles at it. Then he speaks to it in its own language and sends his observations to Dr. Gina on a tablet. After naming the creature Joe, Morgan learns that he is from Minnesota and that he was one of the first people infected. Morgan tries to communicate with Joe and get information from him. He pretends that sometimes he also feels violent urges like the monsters do. He even smiles about what is left of the world and talks about how much he hates life in this place, just like they do. Suddenly, Colonel Knox interrupts the interrogation using the microphone, which sends Joe into another violent rage. Morgan leaves the glass cage to give Joe a chance to calm down, but Knox thinks it is a waste of time and orders Morgan to continue the interrogation. Inside the cage, Joe becomes even more unstable, which makes Knox furious. Out of anger, he shoots Joe. Gina and Morgan become extremely angry because Joe could have given them more information. Gina threatens Knox, saying she will have him removed from his position if he uses his authority like that again inside her lab. Later in the laboratory, Morgan punches the cage with his hand, showing that he also has violent urges like the monsters, but he struggles every day to keep them under control. After that, he goes to the bathroom to calm himself down. Gina finds him there and tries to comfort him. They talk about the situation and the pressure he is under. She offers him medication, but Morgan refuses it. He admits that he keeps having nightmares about his wife's uncle, who was also bitten. Both of them admit that they miss the simple, normal life they once had, and a relationship begins to grow between them. A few minutes later, Knox notices them leaving the bathroom together, and mocks Gina because of her relationship with Morgan. She accuses him of being jealous, and tells him that he will never have a chance with her. Morgan later goes down to the underground cells and stops at one particular cell at the end of the row. Inside is a zombie named Janet, who turns out to be his wife. She was bitten on the same day he was bitten. Morgan gives her an injection containing a serum made from his own blood. Unfortunately, it does not cure her, but at least it slows the infection and allows her to still remember him. At first, Janet knocks the syringe away, but after Morgan asks her to cooperate, she tells him she still remembers the music and then takes the injection. The next day, the soldiers bring in another zombie named Pete. While they are preparing to tie him to the chair, Pete fights back and manages to break free, attacking the men. They try to restrain him, and Dr. Scooter rushes into the cell to help them. Unfortunately, Pete bites Scooter on the hand. The team rushes Scooter to the operating room as he struggles not to turn. He begs them not to let him become one of the monsters. They inject him with the serum, and Gina is forced to cut off his arm before the time runs out. At first, it seems like he is going to be fine, and everyone celebrates. Suddenly, Scooter had a shock and smiled. The soldiers tried to restrain him quickly before he could turn, but unfortunately, they weren't faster than the transformation. He got up from the bed and let out a powerful roar. Knox immediately fired at him, saying that this was exactly what Scooter wanted. Morgan and Gina couldn't deny that Knox had a point. Afterwards, the soldiers came to clean the cell, and Knox decided to drink until he got drunk in the bathroom. Gina, meanwhile, suffered a nervous breakdown on her own, but Morgan found her and tried to calm her down. Later, the two of them went together to the memorial for Scooter's son and placed a small cupcake for his birthday. The next day, they attempted to interrogate Pete again. Morgan was angry over Scooter's death, so he played music and smiled to prolong Pete's torment. He repeated it several times to provoke him. When the questioning began, Pete said he was from Minnesota and that he was infected in October, but he refused to give any more information. Morgan grew angrier, placed a gun to Pete's head, but Pete didn't answer and said, "Go ahead, try it if you can." Out of frustration, Morgan stormed out of the cell. Later, Gina and Morgan met with General Pierce and explained that both Joe and Pete were infected in Minnesota by a group of early carriers. Gina wanted to expand the research in Minnesota because the chance of finding patient zero there was very high. Knox complained about the idea, arguing it would lead to more soldier casualties, but Gina continued, explaining that the zombies had evolved. They were smarter, more dangerous, and capable of strategic attacks. Morgan also tried to convince her that zombies can't lie. In the end, General Pierce approved the Minnesota mission. After the meeting, Morgan gave a serum injection to his wife Janet. While they talked, Janet noticed Morgan had conflicting feelings, toward her and also toward Gina, but Morgan swore that she was everything to him. Janet lost control and begged him to get her out of there, saying she'd rather be free outside than trapped in that place. She also talked about feeling human emotions, like crying. Morgan took her hand and told her not to be afraid, assuring her the injection would help. Morgan tried to suppress the flashbacks from his old life with Janet. He had been determined to have a child, but Janet wanted to wait until they found a suitable surrogate. Still, they were happy together and had their own secret code to show their love. Later, Gina took a blood sample from Morgan and explained that they still hadn't figured out why he was immune. She had tried several experiments on mice, but none worked. The mice would kill each other. Morgan's blood could lower the virus level in the body, calm the infection, and reduce aggression, but the effect lasted no more than 5 minutes. They were still far from finding a real cure. Gina told Morgan that Janet's recovery wasn't guaranteed, which upset him. At that moment, Gina decided to confess her love for him, but Morgan left the room. That night, Morgan dreamed about the night of the incident. He and Janet were in the city, in a dangerous situation. When they stopped at a traffic light, 2 zombies jumped on their car and broke the glass. Morgan drove quickly until the zombies fell, but when the car stopped, more zombies jumped onto it and reached through the glass, and both of them woke up. In the present, Morgan woke up from the nightmare screaming. Later, Gina discovered she was pregnant. Morgan couldn't hide his nervous breakdown because there was no hope she'd return his feelings. Meanwhile, Knox and his men brought the soldiers who had died during the search mission to burn their bodies. After honoring their memory, the soldiers prepared to remove the corpses, but suddenly, one of the dead soldiers woke up. It turned out to be a zombie disguised as a soldier to infiltrate the base. This zombie began killing doctors and soldiers one by one without hesitation. Knox tried to sneak in to grab a gun and wait for the right moment to strike. At that moment, alarms started blaring throughout the labs. After a short time, more soldiers arrived at the morgue, and Knox began searching for the enemy who had disappeared. Suddenly, one of their colleagues who hadn't turned yet jumped, and Knox shot at him while he was moving. At the same time, the hidden zombie jumped at him, trying to attack, but before it could bite, Morgan grabbed it and pulled it away. The soldiers wanted to shoot, but Morgan asked them to leave it so he could interrogate it. Knox put his gun to the zombie's head, and to everyone's surprise, it surrendered and asked to speak with Morgan. The zombie was then placed in the glass cell, and the music started, but it didn't react. It just sat there, pulled out a cigarette and smoked. If it weren't for its different eye color, no one would have known it was a zombie. The soldiers found a university ID with it, so Morgan called it the professor, and the interrogation began. The professor wasn't afraid. He spoke in a mysterious, philosophical way, admitting he had been looking for Morgan, who had become famous among the zombie community. When Morgan asked why the music didn't affect him, the professor explained that every zombie is different, just like humans. He also showed that Morgan's ability to talk to zombies is a unique form of infection. This annoyed Morgan, who insisted he wasn't a zombie. The professor said that these zombies are a more advanced type than humans, capable of calming or destroying as they please. He then told them how he got infected. That day he was giving a lecture at the university, and his wife was calling him constantly, so he went outside to answer. When she told him about the chaos in the city, he heard a sound in the classroom and looked back to see hordes of zombies attacking. He tried to run, but zombies came from every direction, and infected students jumped on him and bit him. His body changed, but his brain stayed conscious enough to regain control. When he saw his wife and daughter, the virus unleashed his inner rage, making his body attack both of them. Morgan felt disgusted by the story, saying he wouldn't have been able to control himself. The professor simply explained that zombies are beyond human limits. He didn't believe in the concept of patient zero, and ignored further questions, blaming the government and the system. This made Morgan lose his temper and hit him before leaving the cell. After calming himself, Morgan returned to the cell, lit a cigarette, and pretended to befriend the professor, which annoyed him even more. Morgan smiled thinking of Janet, and said she didn't need treatment because zombies themselves were the solution to the human infection. The philosophical discussion continued, and Morgan noticed the professor was wasting time on purpose. He suspected he had used the device to scan the zombies, and when he realized nothing was happening, he ran to the cells and found Pete. They shared their theory that the professor had held on deliberately to let the other zombies escape. When Pete sensed Morgan would pressure him to talk, he tried to kill himself and collapsed unconscious. Morgan used the scanner, picked up a signal, and found a wound on Pete's body and a hidden tracking device. Their theory was correct. Pete let the soldiers hold him on purpose so the other zombies could find the base, confirming they had become smart and were planning an attack. Morgan ran to warn Pierce about the coming danger, and Pierce initiated a full lockdown of the base. Unfortunately, the zombies got inside before the entrances could be secured. They smiled as they killed refugees mercilessly. One zombie broke into all the cells, freed the prisoners, and increased the zombie army. The soldiers tried to fire, but their numbers weren't enough. The zombies kept advancing, killing everyone in their path, with hordes running through tunnels and taking over labs, spreading fear even further. Knox took Gina through a safe escape route while Pierce tried to follow, but the zombies were behind them. Knox shot Pierce to distract the zombies, giving them time to escape in the elevator. Gina, shocked by what happened, yelled at Knox for his actions, but he told her sacrifice was necessary to survive. Scared, Gina grabbed a gun and stopped the elevator, wanting to return to the lab for her samples, since her research was their only hope. Knox tried to stop her, and during the struggle, the gun went off accidentally, killing him. With the massacre continuing throughout the base, a scientist tried to escape into the rat lab, but a zombie found her and attacked immediately, knocking over the cage. The infected rats were now free outside the cage. Meanwhile, Morgan ran to the cells to get Janet, so they could escape together. He grabbed an axe on the way, and in the end, they found Gina, who saw they couldn't take Janet because the injection was temporary. Morgan refused to leave her behind. A zombie appeared behind them, but Gina killed it instantly, and told them she'd return for the samples. Morgan and Janet followed Gina to the lab's fridge. When she got what she needed, another zombie appeared and tried to attack them, but Morgan struck it with the axe. At the same time, the professor let out a loud roar. Soon after, a few zombies came to rescue him. The three of them tried to climb out through the ventilation shaft, avoiding dangerous wires along the way. As the zombies moved, Gina saw the refugee area through the mesh and reflected on the massacre. The mesh fell due to their weight, revealing their location to the zombies. The three continued moving, but Bella blocked the path with a rat zombie. Janet quickly grabbed it and killed it. They saw more zombies coming through the vent, so they hurried. Morgan had to push the zombies until the vent broke, causing them to fall to the ground. Morgan almost fell, but Gina saved him at the last moment. Finally, they reached the garage by the vehicles, where the professor was waiting. He told them the zombie base came to kill Morgan because his blood could prevent zombies from having a future, claiming Morgan was the zombie version of Patient Zero. Morgan and the professor started fighting. The women tried to help, but the professor easily overpowered them. The three continued the fight using everything in the room. Morgan tried to make the professor fall on a pipe, injuring himself in the process. Before dying, the professor screamed to gather a large horde of zombies. The three ran, and when they reached the door, Janet said she would stay behind to slow the zombies. Morgan refused, but Janet told him she was pregnant to distract the zombies and closed the door. After Morgan cried over his wife, he and Gina escaped through the emergency exit into the forest. Zombies were around them, but Morgan was confident they could get away because he had a hidden motorcycle nearby. They jumped on it and sped through the forest, with zombies chasing them from a distance. And that's how the movie ends. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.